Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's water cooler chat. This week we're going to be talking about all things Livepeer. If you are a orchestrator, delegator, broadcaster, come join us on stage and let's talk about Livepeer. As you join, you'll see yourself in the audience. You can put up your hand and we can invite you up to stage. Anyone is allowed to come up and have a conversation about Livepeer. It doesn't matter if you're new or experienced. Just put up your hand and I'll invite you up to the stage and we can get started. Today we have a bit of an agenda, so we're going to start off with introductions like we normally do, as well as a list of topics that the community wants to cover. And then we'll be going through a Q&A session with Doug Petkanics. He is the founder of Livepeer, and he'll be joining us probably in about half an hour. He'll be joining us for a Q&A for about 15-30 minutes, and we'll have some questions ready for him. And I think mostly the topic is going to be around, obviously, the Layer 2 upgrade that's happening currently, as well as maybe I thought of a topic of, strategies for attracting stake. So maybe I'll just make that my topic. But so if you're in chat with us, please come out. Just think of a topic for the chat as well as a question for Doug. If you can have those two things ready. Otherwise, you can also just sit back, relax, listen, and also join us on stage. So either way, we're pretty open here. So we'll start with introductions, and I will lead the charge. So I am Titan. I run the Titan node Orchestrator. Been operating the Orchestrator since May 2021. And today's topic is going to be about what I just said earlier, strategies for attracting stake on Layer 2. And my question for Doug will be, what other protocols has he seen successful that he thinks that, Livepeer will want to mimic when it comes to its stake distribution? So those are my two topics, and we'll jump right into it. So the first introduction we have here is Authority Null. Do you want to introduce yourself on a topic?
Sure. Hey guys, Authority Null. Been transcoding for about 4 months now. The topic I have is on the grant proposal. I know before L2 we discussed maybe changing it up a little bit, and I'm curious to know if you Titan have made any progress there and thinking about ways we can change up how you distribute the grant.
Great. Yeah, you're talking about the Titan Node Startup Grant specifically.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes, I have some updates on that, as well as I'd like to get some feedback on the startup grant as well. So we will definitely get into that because it's very, very interesting and hopefully a useful tool for the community. So I thank you for that, Authority. Interpreter, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hello. Yes, this is Interpretr, representing Interpretr here. And I don't have a specific topic for today. Although I apologize for any background noise. If you can hear that, it's the sound of me furiously searching for a hosting provider in Singapore. Aside from that, all is well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next up is Ftkuhnsman.
Hey all. Good afternoon or good evening. Joey with the Ftkuhnsman node, run Ftkuhnsman node pool. My topic for today was actually a question I brought up on the one of the channels in the Discord, and it's about understanding how the face value of tickets are defined. I think there was some back and forth there, but yeah, just want to see if anybody has any insights.
Very good. Thank you so much. And we will continue on to Papa Bear. Would you like to introduce yourself on the topic?
Sure. I am Papa Bear. I've been running Solar Farm Orchestrator since July of last year. And the top, actually, I have two topics. Well, actually, maybe three. One is, there's been a lot of talk about people having issues with Arbitrum RPCs, just getting errors and things like that. I'm just curious to know if anyone's, besides seeing an error, has actually seen that it's degrading performance at all. Or is it just that it shows up in your console and it looks like it's a problem? Just kind of curious to know other people's opinions on that one or observations. And I also have a question now that call and reward automatically for the first time ever. I mean, you've called it in the past, but I always did it manually. When does that happen? Does it happen at the beginning of the round? Because it seems like it hasn't been any problem, but because I'm using the bot that Vires has provided to all of us, thank you. I just got 2 notifications today that my reward hasn't been called for this round yet. So I just didn't know at what point do I decide to make a manual call there, or so I just didn't know if anyone knows when the call happens or how that works. If you miss it, did something maybe possibly happen where I missed it and I need to manually call it? And then last one is there, like, we used to be able to use Hubble to see who was delegated towards us, and now that we've moved over, there's I'm not aware of any tools that replace that or that work to see who is delegated towards us. And if anyone knows anything about another option or how to figure out how many delegators we have, that would be awesome. So that's my 3 for the day.
I appreciate all those questions. That is a great. Great. Is anyone specific for Doug, or are those just 3 general topics?
No, those are just 3 general topics. I figured Doug's probably had some stuff he wants to talk about, and
Yeah.
got topics for him. So.
Very good. Yeah, those are all 3 really good questions, and I appreciate those. So we'll write those down and we'll move on to B79. Would you like to introduce yourself on the topic?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad. I run the B79 Orchestrator since March of 2021. It's been quite a ride so far. I have no additional topic. Ftkuhnsman covered one of mine with the face value of tickets and how it's determined. I've been trying to test it, but I think it takes more steps than I'm willing to do right now on Rinkby. And Papa Bear covered like the delegators, how to figure it out. I know you can use the graph, like the playground. I was wondering if there's an easier way to do it or a better way.
Very good. The graph playground for finding out how many delegators there are?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's for the Livepeer one.
Very good. Okay, yeah, we'll jump into that as well. I'm curious about maybe exploring that. Thank you for joining us. Nightwolf, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ryan. I run Nightnode. The question that I want to look into is I started using a Redeemer node. We'll start deploying permissionless, orchestrators for people who want to join the pool. Well, like my small quote unquote pool. But we opened up an European orchestrator on a server, and for some reason, while I was running it in Redeemer, it was basically getting either 0 or 1 or no streams for multiple hours. Take it off the Redeemer node and it runs totally fine. But the thing is, it's hard to gauge whether or not it's just poor traffic or if I'm doing something completely wrong, because usually my traffic for these regions with a stake, even though I finally hit like top 4, which is nice, top 5. But it's just hard to see because usually my traffic's super low. So I'm curious if for larger ones that usually have a higher average, if they're seeing instability or any issues if they're running Redeemer. So be nice to see.
Yeah, I'd be curious to talk about that as well. I just started up a Redeemer node yesterday. I started up 2 days ago, but I moved all my nodes onto a Redeemer node now. So I'd be curious. Yeah, I'd be curious to talk to you about that and maybe what issues you're having. Yeah, permissionless orchestrating is something I also am very curious about. Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself on the topic?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason, and I've been running my node for like 8-9 months, and my question was like the same, like how guys have you set up the Redeemer and the Orchestrator, and then I think we were already discussing the topic, so yeah, I think I'll just hear it out.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Vires, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hey, I'm running the Syrinx 525 transcoder. No questions from my side. Hopefully answer some other questions.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Syrinx, Syrinx, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic? And I guess a question for Doug as well. We need to be maybe writing some of those down.
Sure. Not sure that I have a question for Doug. I wish I did, but I totally forgot we do these on Monday. But yeah, I'm Alex. I run the Syrinx node. Not too much is new. I mean, I guess I did finally get a setup using HashiCorp Vault and Console running our primary node, which has been cool because it's sort of boring DevOps stuff at some point, but it's way more secure and definitely much less hacked together than what we had prior. So just kind of listening today, but yeah, glad everyone is here.
Can you repeat that? You set it up with what, sorry?
Yeah, with two tools from HashiCorp called Vault and Console. So Vault is basically a more secure kind of key management system. So basically, it's a better way to have a bunch of important keys lingering on a system and still be able to do sort of automated tasks with them.
Okay, interesting. I might get you to explain that a little bit further on, if you don't mind having that your topic. I'm curious to hear about it.
Definitely.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Next we have Marco. Would you like to introduce yourself and the topic?
Hi everyone, my name is Marco. I work on Mist server, and my topic for today is finding bottlenecks within your Orchestrator setup.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? Finding what, sorry?
Bottlenecks within your Orchestrator.
Oh, bottlenecks. Very good. Yes, finding bottlenecks. That's a good point. Bottlenecks in Orchestrator. Great. Any other questions? Do you have a question for Doug or anything?
Not really.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Chase Media, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hi everyone, it's Rebecca with Chase Media. I started off with Titan Node because I'm his fiance, and I rebranded Titan Node 2, and it's really great to be getting back involved with everyone. I'm really curious with the point that Papa Bear brought up about the calling of reward, just because my node went down, and that must have been the moment when the reward was called for that day, and I missed it, and wasn't sure if it was a specific time as well, or what I can do in the future to avoid that. So there we are, and nothing for Doug. I'm just curious to hear what he has to say. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. Next we have LeBasque. Would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, so I'm LeBasque. I'm running a node from like 3 months. Just maybe one topic, a quick question regarding the face value and the payment counter that we have in the dashboard in Grafana, because I noticed that when we like update the nodes or reboot the node, it goes down to 0 and you don't have any rewards. So I thought it was saved inside like the DB in the Orchestrator, but it might not be the case. So maybe wondering what's your experience on that.
Very good. Yeah, I believe a lot of us here have experience with that, and we will definitely have an answer for you. So if you stick around, we'll definitely get to that. And I appreciate you joining us. Okay, I think... Oh, and we now have Thrice joining us. Thrice, would you introduce yourself on a topic?
Hey guys, this is Ed. I run Guard State Node. Truca, I just got off the phone with this Colombian guy that bought like 1,000 LPT and didn't even know what to do with them. So I was explaining to him the whole like staking and what Livepeer even does. So he was just complaining about the lack of documentation in Spanish. So just that could be a topic.
Yeah, lack of documentation in Spanish. That's a very good point. I don't know if I've found any other documentation in a different language. So, good topic. I'd like to also ask Doug about that, if you don't mind. Thank you for joining us. Franck with Ultima Ratio, would you like to introduce yourself on the topic?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Franck, and I'm running Ultima Ratio node with Sienna. I have no special topic tonight. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. And I see we have a couple more people in the audience. Just go ahead and raise your hand if you want to come up onto the stage, ask some questions, and we can also come join. So I'm just reading the chat. Says, how do I disable invites? It's been here since 2017. Okay, just if you also have a question, go ahead and throw it into the chat invite, the chat channel. If you have any questions, and then we can also just shout them out here and write down those questions. So you don't necessarily have to talk. You can go ahead and write your questions in the event chat, and we can try and answer them as well. So yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so let's get started right into some of the topics. We'll just start with some general topics, and I noticed there are some quick answers to some topics that we can quickly get through, and then Doug will be joining us shortly, and we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll get into the nitty and gritty technical stuff later on. So I kind of figured we'd do a linear approach where we start with the easy stuff, and then we dig into the weeds later on into the conversation. So the first question that I find, I know the answer to, and I'll let the community answer it. LeBasque, you said the Grafana payment goes to 0. Can you just explain what you're seeing and what your concerns are?
Well, when you use the global Livepeer dashboard, you can see the expected daily payments, and you have another counter at the right. Which is the value of a ticket, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember well, but I should check. But and I was just it goes down to 0 once you reboot. So I thought it was like a bug or something like that, but not sure about it.
Does anyone want to go ahead and try explain what they're how they see it and what's going on?
That expected limit, or that expected payment, that's just representative, right? It doesn't. It's not like you're not getting cumulative tickets to pay, like an expected payout eventually. It's just it's just kind of tracking, what you like, almost like what the luck percentage is, right? Or am I mistaken?
I think what he's saying is his is resetting to 0 every time he restarts, and that is the default configuration. I know that I had that issue when I first started, and I changed my query based on, I forgot who at the time told me what to do, and I can be happy to look it up and post it into the chat. I just don't know it off the top of my head what I changed, but it might have been changing something like just keeping the, how long to retain the data for, but Vires may know, or I think it might have even been Franck or that told me what to do, but yes, no, that is the default way that it happens, because I was like, why does this keep resetting? So it's not something you've done, but you do need to make a change to keep the data persistent.
Yeah, but basically it's not the delay expected. This one is pretty fine. It's the face value of the ticket that you get. I don't know why, but it's maybe by design. It's when you restart your orchestrator, you see that the value of a ticket is getting from 0 to and increasing every time you get tickets. So, and same thing, I was asking, because since I'm running my node, I get 1 winning ticket like 2 weeks after starting, and from there 2 months nothing. So I don't know. There is something weird to understand on how the payments are coming.
So one thing about the expected value and such, that those are all counters, and they get reset once you restart your node. And so you have to change your formula in Grafana to calculate the increase. So then when it resets to 0, it still keeps counting and adding up. And also you have to change the retention time, like Papa Bear said. It has to be larger. Otherwise, after a few months, you will...
Marco, is there any way you could turn your volume up? It's hard to hear you. I am assuming for everyone.
1 second, I'll change my settings.
I just want to also... I also want to just jump in real quick, LeBasque. Just to confirm, are you aware of how probabilistic micropayments work within Livepeer?
Well, basically, I'm not sure because from what I understand, it's you are not getting a payment for like if you do 50 minutes of transcoding, and it's more an arbitrary payment.
Right. So like just to confirm, when your counter resets, it's not like you lose that money, right? It's not like you accumulate tickets and then eventually you hit a payout, right? It doesn't matter if it resets to 0. Each payment is like a lottery ticket, and statistically, you just have the chance of winning a payout with each ticket. So it doesn't matter if you accumulate tickets; they're all just you can just reset those to 0. It doesn't actually matter how many tickets you've accumulated, right? Because the way it works is they work like lottery tickets. So statistically, out of 50,000 tickets, you should win 1 payout. But it doesn't matter if you've actually accumulated them or not. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. So I just wanted to
basically Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify. There's a difference between retaining the data in like Grafana so that you can just see how many tickets you've had previously, and like you're worried about you're losing money because you're not getting the ticket. Like there's a difference there. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it's good to know because I was chatting with other small orchestrators because we don't have like a lot of stack, so we get less jobs, and we were speaking about the let's say if you claim your rewards every time, and based on that you are losing money if you don't get like at least 1 winning ticket per month or something like this. We were doing some calculation with one of my colleagues that is running a node, and we noticed that we were losing like 50 cents of dollar each call. So it's what I was just trying to understand, how to improve the chance to win a ticket. But basically, if you don't have more stack, I guess there is nothing magic that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on demand for the network and all these other things. But I just wanted to clarify that if you reset your node and your Grafana goes back to 0, you haven't lost any money, or your chances of winning a ticket, right? That's just simply like what metrics you decide to keep within Prometheus and Grafana. Marco, go ahead.
I pasted in my into the event chat what I'm using for my expected ETH payout. That I believe that keeps it persistent. But maybe someone else wants to take a peek at that and just confirm that.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Hopefully, did that answer your question, or did you want to elaborate a bit more? Are you still have any questions about that?
No,
okay.
It's clearer for me. Thanks.
Great, Marco. I noticed that you got cut off halfway. Did you want to finish your thought?
I don't know if my mic is better now or not, but
yes,
much better.
It is.
Yes. So I was talking about changing your formulas in Grafana because the counter gets reset once you restart your node. So you have to use increase, and then it will keep on counting even after you restart your node. And also, you might want to change your retention time of Prometheus because otherwise, after a few months, you will lose your old data, and you can set it to like a couple of years in the future if you want, depending on how long you plan on running your node.
Very good. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the question, and I always learn more stuff every time I listen to these chats and different configurations that people have, so it's great. I see Doug has also joined us in the chat here, and what I will do is we'll switch over to the Q&A portion of this water cooler, where we can talk to Doug, ask him some questions, and get some more insight into some of the updates and the Livepeer in general. Doug is I guess the founder.
Hey, Dion. Hey, everyone.
Hey. What I'll do, Doug, I'll get you to introduce yourself, and then we'll have a couple questions for you, and then we'll go from there.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dion. I join these when I can. I can't always make it, but excited about Confluence and the launch, and really counting down the moments until the block when the delegation market can open up in about a day and a half. I was hoping it would be today, but I guess we got a little longer to wait. I think many of you probably know me. For those who don't, I'm one of the founders of the Livepeer project and kind of authored the original protocol and white paper, and have been working on it for 5 years. So probably as intimately familiar with the inner workings of Livepeer kind of across the board as anyone here. That said, I know I kind of retired my Orchestrator node a few months back in order to open up slots for those who kind of had better hardware and were more active. And I know many of you have much deeper experience and knowledge with the ins and outs of node operation than even I do these days. So yeah, happy to pop in and answer questions. Hopefully I can be helpful.
Great, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Doug. I'll start with myself and the question that I had, and my question just revolves around what do you see some strategies for delegators attracting stake, and what other protocols have you seen that have done well with delegated proof of stake that maybe you could point to or maybe trying to maybe mimic within Livepeer, if not, doing your own your own thoughts, just talk about that a little bit. I'm really curious.
Yeah, I guess I would take it back to some of the original ideas behind how Livepeer's delegation market could and would work, and then talk about some of the roadblocks that we've hit, and now kind of how some of those roadblocks might be removed now that we've scaled to layer 2. So initially the idea was, if you assume that you have this very active market with lots of fees and lots of rewards being generated, then delegators would show up and they would stake towards node operators who are basically, like, on one hand, creating the best return for them by having competitive reward cuts and calling reward every day and generating new Livepeer token. But another element of that return is the fees that they're generating and sharing back to delegators through the fee share. And the logic would be that as new nodes emerge on the network that can perform really well, they might be willing to kind of build up delegated stake by sharing more of their fees, right? And so nodes would stake towards them because they could earn more of the fees that are being earned and shared back, kind of an outsized portion relative to what they would get if they were staked towards a node with a lot of stake. And so delegators would come and they'd move their stake around, continuously trying to activate these new high performing competitive nodes while the fee shares were high. And then because those nodes were performing well, building up reputation, able to call reward every day, building up their own stake, eventually they might not have to share quite as much of the fees. They would be able to maybe reduce that fee share because they would have their own stake on their own node securing the work. And that would be okay. Maybe delegators would move on to activate, new nodes with low stake. And the result of this is you'd have this global network with hundreds or thousands of orchestrator nodes that all are kind of bootstrapped into having sufficient LPT ownership in the network to secure their own work, right? I think we've seen that play out a little bit in the early days of the network. I don't know if fees ever became a high enough share of the incentives to truly encourage it, though we did see kind of a more active delegation market a couple of years ago when gas fees were low and new nodes would come on and they would campaign for how they were contributing and stake would move to them to activate them. So it played out a little bit, but ultimately kind of the gas costs of moving stake around and moving delegation and the high cost of calling reward every single day meant that even if you move stake towards a node, they might not be able to call reward. So, why bother moving your stake towards that node? Kind of put a roadblock in here and um, prevented people from moving a lot of stake around. And that was really unfortunate, right? So when I look ahead to being on layer 2 and kind of reopening this delegation market again with Confluence, now all of a sudden the barrier to profitably call reward every day with a reasonable reward cut comes down a lot, right? I'm gonna estimate it. It changes with fluctuating gas prices. I don't know where it is, but it's something like 1 to 5,000 Livepeer token, whereas previously on layer 1 it was like 50,000 Livepeer token. And so now all of a sudden it really seems practical to show through your performance, show through the fees that you're earning, and show through your kind of like campaign, if you're willing, through your profile or forum post or participation in the Discord, how you're contributing to this ecosystem. And I think it really opens up the floodgates to kind of activate, all 100 slots with high performers pretty quickly, because all of a sudden it actually becomes tangible to split stake across many accounts for delegators to activate these new nodes to chase the fees. And I know I'm talking while I'll pause to kind of dive into specific topics and questions, but I'm confident we're going to see a flurry of activity, and then I have a bunch of ideas for things we can build or things we can do together as a community to even accelerate that activity and help get stake on every node, so that every high performing node can build up their LPT stake on more of the network and participate profitably.
Very cool. Yeah, I appreciate that introduction and to the answer to that question. I think a lot of us here are really excited for the upgrade that's coming tomorrow, which we were hoping today, but it will be coming tomorrow. Now I want to open up the floor. I know I have a couple questions in the back pocket from some people in here, but based on Doug's response, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? They can go ahead and ask them now. What I'll do is I'll start with Thrice, because Thrice had mentioned. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Thrice, but you had mentioned that the documentation for staking and this is not in Spanish. Do you want to just maybe elaborate on that a little bit and what challenge you've come across?
Yeah, no worries. I was regarding the guy David, who just messaged like the general channel like a couple minutes before the call started. And I've seen there's not much activity on the Spanish channel either, but I figured I'd have a call with him, and he, like I said, just recently bought like 1,000 LPT on Binance, and he like didn't even know what the project was about. Said he had been trying to find documentation about like what to do with his stake and if staking was even a thing. So I mean, I think after I got off the call with him, I'm like, well, that's an opportunity for me to maybe, as an orchestrator, target Latin America and those people. Although I don't know if LeBasque is also from Spain, if he's actually Basque, but yeah, maybe that's something I could work on also, just making a quick guide in Spanish based off some of the documentation that's already out there.
Well, I can help a bit if you want, but I'm better in French.
Okay.
Yeah, I think increasing the internationalization of all of our kind of key resources and docs would be great. I just pasted a link in the event chat, the livepeer.org site and primer, and I think white paper are actually already available in Spanish, and those were kind of community-driven efforts. I think they were grants that were applied for and given, and so I could definitely see opportunity for, say, if you wanted to take a shot at internationalizing the documentation just through translation contribution. That seems very reasonable candidate for a grant and something that there wouldn't be any resistance to being merged in.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Is the internationalization of all the documentation and helping people from around the world understand the network. Obviously, I've made some tutorials, but they're all in English. So, yeah, anyone that has that capability would probably do very well, especially if they maybe branded their node around that. Thrice, did you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Your point about branding, I was going to say your point about branding the node is actually something I didn't really mention before, though I know many of the people on this call have already picked up on it. You asked about kind of strategies for attracting delegation. Part of the original thesis as well is that Livepeer doesn't have like this big kind of ecosystem token pool, which is just set aside for the community to like vote on ongoing funding for these sorts of effort. The notion is Livepeer has inflation funding built in. Every single round, new inflationary tokens get routed to the node operators when they call reward. And the notion was, or the thesis was, node operators could actually brand their node and campaign around additional contributions beyond just performing the encoding itself. So for example, you could in your node's campaign say, oh, I'm upping my reward cut to 15% or whatever. I'm going to do it for 3 months. I'm going to also spend more time during those 3 months on translating all the resources into Spanish, right? And people would recognize, hey, that's a public good contribution worth funding. We'll stake towards the node. We'll forgo some of our inflation via the reward call because we think that the translation will be great for the ecosystem, right? And I know a number of projects in the early days successfully funded themselves independently by just kind of campaigning for their types of contributions. Now I think we can again see that impact come back more now that delegation is effective and the reward calls are going to be more cost effective.
Very cool. I noticed you did mention it. You said you open up more spots. You said hundreds or even thousands of orchestrators. Could you tell us a little bit about the thought process behind the limit of 100 orchestrators, and if that would move, and how quickly would that move into the future? Or at least just your thoughts on it, because obviously it's a voted thing. We can vote on it as a community, but what are your thoughts behind that?
Right. So anyone could propose that and vote on increasing that at any time. There's a couple different inputs there. One is, what is actually what we think kind of a reasonable amount of stake that any node in the active set should have in order to secure their work that they're performing on the network, right? Would users be willing to work with nodes that have very low stake amounts, especially as the verification kind of comes back online and economic penalties for attacking the network or deliberately misencoding video could come back online, right? And so the number of nodes that you have in the available stake and kind of the distribution of how much stake goes on each node, which I think we'll see a much more even distribution now post confluence, matters. But actually, I think the other more practical input to consider is how we're securing the micropayments. So in order to consider working with 100 broadcasters in the active set, a broadcaster needs to have a pretty large deposit in order for the orchestrator to have confidence that when they'll cash in a winning ticket, that the funds will actually be there in order to be redeemed. And the wider you expand that set, the larger deposit that the broadcaster would need to have in order to secure a ticket with a high face value. So the good news is here on Confluence, we're seeing that payment tickets can be lower face value, and so therefore broadcaster deposits could be lower in order to secure that, and that means you could increase the kind of the active set size by an order of magnitude without changing kind of the expectations for broadcaster deposit. I think that's a big positive. I think it still comes with a trade-off. Curious to get orchestrator opinions. What percent overhead in order to cash in a winning ticket you're willing to pay in fees seems reasonable. I think when we theoretically designed the micropayments, we said it's going to be about a 1% overhead to cash in a ticket. So if you earn $100, you're paying $1 fee in order to cash the ticket. Obviously, we've seen it be a much higher overhead on L1 with high gas fees. Now on L2, I think we are seeing it. That's still in the ballpark of that 1% order of magnitude, even if it's a little higher. Curious if the orchestrators would be willing to say, absorb a much higher overhead, 5%, 10% of the ticket face value price to cash in tickets if it meant that we could expand the set, to hundreds or 1,000 nodes sooner rather than later. I think that'll be an interesting trade-off. Finally, other payments mechanisms could be considered that don't put that requirement on the network, though they come with all sorts of trade-offs and complexity as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Does anyone have any comments on that?
I have a question. I, you know, on L1, all the payments were the same amount. You know, they were like, it was 0.18 at least towards the end. Now they vary a little bit. I'm just wondering, like, how is that determined? The payment amount now. Did something change in the way that it's done? I mean, I know it's less, but I just don't know if there's a formula for that.
So I can answer that question like theoretically in terms of how it could or should or probably works, right? We'd have to look at the code. I'm less familiar with the specific implementation detail of the broadcast node, but basically what's supposed to happen is that the broadcast node and orchestrator nodes, it's really the orchestrator nodes, I believe, specify the parameters that they're willing to accept based on the broadcaster deposit and the active set size. So the active set size has stayed pretty constant. It's around 100. The broadcaster deposit has been, I think maintained in a certain range so it doesn't run out of funds. And then the gas prices are another input there, right? And I guess gas prices certainly fluctuate a bunch. I'm not sure how that gets, smoothed into the algorithm of what's ticket face value it's requesting. But those are the inputs, right? And so I think what happened as we move to layer 2, you'd see the gas prices come down dramatically. And so that input into the calculation has affected what ticket parameters are requested by the orchestrator, right? And that's why you've seen them willing to accept lower face value tickets because the gas price to redeem them is lower. So there's a lower kind of overhead in terms of the fees you have to pay. And therefore, I think the nodes prefer to get paid more often. They prefer lower face value tickets. That helps with the security of the network as well, because there's less risk that a broadcaster would kind of double spend or run out of funds if they accidentally sent a bunch of winning tickets or had the probabilities go against them. So I think those are the inputs, and the reason why you see it the same is because everyone's running the same implementation, right? Everyone's running the same node software that's doing the calculation in the same way based on the network params. There might be parameters you could configure to kind of override preferences. I'm just not sure if anyone.
I think those may be disabled, but currently, just because no one's been able to figure out how to adjust any of that, so I'm not sure if those are not currently active. But I guess just because there's small variances, it's not like it's a big deal. I was just kind of curious. So it might just be the gas price that's causing just like it's like point, like 0.9, 1.6 for one, and then it'll be like 0.9 or 0.09, like 2 for another one. Was just wondering why there's a slight variance versus like on layer 1 it was always exactly the same, but it's probably calculating the gas, which is a small amount now.
Or decreasing / increasing broadcaster deposits as well.
So
right. I think it's
really more the variance more than the amount, just why it's not an equal amount every time. But that gives me a pretty good idea of what's going on. Thank you.
So in reference to that overhead, you were talking about expanding it to, a couple hundred or 1,000 of orchestrators possibly, but that overhead going up. But if you're looking at that overhead in terms of like 6 months from now or a year from now, like right now we're on Arbitrum 1, then they're going to have Arbitrum Nitro, which is supposed to significantly increase the amount of transactions per second, then decrease the fees if I'm not mistaken. And then once you have Ethereum 2.0 and those increased transactions per second, which I believe, if I'm not also mistaken as well, is Arbitrum is taking their gas price and basing off of what the cost of rollup is plus their fee on that. So in the future, wouldn't transactions be so like almost down to like Solana levels where it's like a quarter of a cent? In which case overhead on tickets could be almost nothing. So even if you did expand it out, it wouldn't be like 1% or 5%. Like it could still be like a fraction of a percent, and then you can still have and then you can have expand that without really increasing your overhead.
Yeah, it's always going to be a function of the block space and the demand on a blockchain or a roll up, right? So if there, like, let's just imagine that there was 100,000 streams of video flowing through the Livepeer network at any given moment, right? Then every 2 seconds there's a segment of video, so that's 50,000 transactions a second if you wanted to get paid for every single segment of video, right? And so, if your win probability on every ticket is 100%, then our blockchain needs to support 50,000 transactions per second only for Livepeer, only to cash in winning tickets. And if there's enough capacity on, a roll up chain or an ETH2 shard or something for that, then great. We don't even have probabilities anymore. You can actually settle, value for a 2-second segment anytime, right? But in reality, there's probably not that much space. You're probably still competing for some scarce resource, whether that's compute or storage or bandwidth on the nodes that process these networks. And so, yeah, we could get it down to far lower overhead and talk 0.1% or something, or you accept a little bit of overhead. It's 1%. You get paid a little less frequently, but it's still very very smooth curve, and you kind of remove these luckiness and probabilities out of when you get paid, and it's with very high probability smooths itself to pretty accurate with pretty frequent payouts. So I think still a ways to go to get there, but I think that's the potential. And we get into the whole how do we scale Livepeer in the future is a big discussion. But there's a lot of value at stake on our network. There's a lot of really capable node operators who already are experts at running infrastructure. You get into questions like, does it make sense to run our own roll-up chain or zone on a different type of architecture, whether it's like a parachain or a Cosmos zone or whatnot, and not be competing for block space with other apps, but still have enough stake at stake to run a node? And is it worth the risk and the engineering effort and testing and whatnot to do that? I think those are all forward-looking scaling decisions, but I think for now we always value just making the practical decision to get to the next step that makes a big impact to all our network operators.
I think for smaller nodes in particular, it would be really nice to have that goal of moving away from the probabilistic payments. Or I'm not saying we have to be paid per segment, but for smaller nodes, when they're like not having good luck, it hurts a lot more than for a bigger node that's gonna the probability is gonna kind of even out faster. And like for me, I'm like at like half the amount of payouts based on the amount of work I've done. So like I this isn't keeping me from like eating or anything like that, but just as far as like statistically speaking, it's tougher for the small guys when they're behind on the um,
He's very familiar with
probability.
this.
How much overhead, Papa Bear? How much overhead would you be willing to deal with in order to cash tickets more frequently? Like, would you pay 25 or 50% overhead, or would you rather cash
I
it
mean,
in frequently
25 or
but keep it around
50%
5%?
is probably more, and I'd have to think about it. But I mean, I would definitely be willing to pay more than 1%.
Right.
For it. But to give you an exact number, I'd have to think about it for a bit. But I mean, I would say I'd be. I mean, I'm also like, I guess used to the L1 number, so everything seems pretty cheap compared to what we were paying there.
Yeah.
But I mean, 1% obviously is nice, but I also think it would be nice just to if we had more control over what we're willing, if we could set that ourselves.
Yeah,
As
that's where
orchestrators.
like dynamic expected values would be very beneficial. Like Papa Bear could be willing to put down half the ticket just to get a payout, but then other people who get them frequently probably might not be. But so to give that like modularity to choosing, when you get your paycheck kind of thing is would be very beneficial. Be a nice benefit.
Yeah, that seems like that's purely like an implementation detail, right? Like that's a ticket that could be opened up on Go Livepeer that it'd be great to get. open source contribution on, or a team member picks up when they find the time or something. But I don't see anything too challenging in terms of actually enabling that user input. Right. Keep in mind, it's going to come with side effects. Like you're going to set your parameters for what you think you want, and then if gas prices swing wildly, like what's the side effect look like on that? Should the node do things automatically? Should it just follow your instructions? We've seen those sorts of things where people want control, but then they also want safeguards. So it needs a little bit of product thought. But
Yeah, no, and
should totally
again, why that's why I'm not just going to shoot a number out. We definitely want to think about I guess some of what that's opening up, but in general, I like the concept of having some control over it.
Yeah, control is great until you accidentally call reward at 900 GUI on layer 1. Or at least automation.
Can we laugh about that now yet, or it's still too soon?
Oh
yeah,
I can, because I didn't have enough tickets cashed for it to be an issue.
or until
Actually,
you
I
pay
guess
$400.
calling rewards. I don't know if I'm ready to laugh at that one, because I called a lot of rewards trying to bring in stake, and it didn't bring me in anyone. So yeah, that one hurt. Yeah, but yeah, I can laugh about it. I got pretty good sense of humor, so sure, laugh about it.
Yeah, it was funny on layer 1 when Papa Bear won the Tight Node grant. His strategy obviously was to get 30 out of 30 so that people would move stake. But the exact pain he felt for calling reward was the exact pain delegators felt for transferring stake. So it ended up just being painful on both sides and not really working.
Yeah, that was a big learning process for me to not look at the other side of the of the equation there.
Mm-hmm. Doug, how much?
I really hope that now that we're on layer 2, all that pain for the delegator side can be mitigated, and everyone here with high performance will feel profitably activated very soon. Actually, I think the bigger question is not actually the underlying cost or economic incentives. It might be the user interface, the user experience that delegators have and see in order to kind of be encouraged to move stake towards high performing nodes and recognize they're helping the network and helping themselves in terms of better returns in the process. I don't know if that's smack you in the face obvious to you as a delegator when you land on
no,
kind of
I think that's actually a big
score
point
that
is
we have today, right?
It's very confusing, I think, especially for a new delegator to understand that, hey, if I go with a smaller node and then they win tickets, I'm getting especially if you're staking a small amount, it's a much bigger advantage to be on a smaller node. And I don't know how to the best way to put that into the Explorer to explain that, because it's kind of a lot to take in. But yeah, I think it's a fairly complex system. So for someone who's coming in without, we take it for granted because we sit here and we do this stuff all day long. But for someone who's just kind of coming in to know that oh yeah, if I go with a small guy and he gets a ticket, I'm going to get a lot more of that fee. Whereas if I go with a big guy, I'm splitting that with a couple hundred people.
When I first came to Livepeer, I delegated with Block Demon, and I was like, all right, his APY seems to be a little bit higher. I didn't know anything about score at all, and so I delegated with him. He had a large amount of stake and everything. Turns out his transcoder score was 3 all the time. He for 4 months got 0 tickets. It was pretty bad. So then, but I was stuck because I put in a small amount. But usually for any protocol, anybody who's going to come in is going to look at pretty much the whales and be like, all right, these guys know what they're talking about. Oh shit, their fees are super high. They get a ton of APY. It's just, let's just go with them. So it does, the way it currently works, it does drive you just to kind of look at what's most established without having to do a ton of research.
So there's some learnings from what I'll call the great staking boom of 2018 or 2019, when all of a sudden all these proof of stake networks launched, and kind of people went from just being Bitcoin holders to being people who were like exchanging their assets for these alternative tokens and using them to like stake and kind of get an APY on their tokens. And what happened was all of these sites popped up out of nowhere, like stakingrewards.net and these sorts of things that like ranked the projects kind of just by this pure financial return that you got by holding the token and staking and participating, and it drove a ton of like attention to Livepeer and others because it was like so simple for the people on the other side to see what they could be doing or should be doing. And so that when I like apply that to Livepeer being on layer 2, I think it wouldn't be crazy if there was some alternative site or property that rose up that literally just tracked, maybe not by like all-time fees or all these performance scores, but literally just looked at trying to analyze like what's the weekly APY you would get by staking towards these orchestrators, or like ranked them by the APY they were generating. Because if they're calling a reward, they have their reward cut, but some of them are earning more fees and payouts are more frequent because we have these lower face values. All of a sudden it might be very obvious that, hey, the new nodes that are, or the low stake nodes that are high performing and sharing fees are actually like the best return like for that week, and that would attract like a lot of stake. And then the next week, because now that node has a lot of stake, it's splitting the fees more ways. Now next week, like there's another node that looks like the best APY, and it'll be always be a little trailing, but it might just be like dynamic, and it might make it easy for token holders to see who should I be staking towards, and ideally that aligns with who's actually like helping the network the most and performing the best. And I would think that something like that, like an alternative UI that's maybe not in the Explorer but just dedicated to this purpose, could be a big like solution to this challenge.
And is there a reason not to integrate something like that into the Explorer?
Good question. I'm curious what you all think. Like, I think there's some benefit to the Explorer being kind of this like neutral, accessible gateway that's not just positioned as like, here's your return on investment, right? Like there's some benefits to neutrality if it's being funded by the project and everything. Though obviously, it should have the network's best interest at heart as well. So I think it's a little tricky to know if like the Explorer, which needs to be a everything tool to everybody, could also be a specialized tool for this specific purpose.
Well, we kind of discussed it in some other chats, and it would just be like a user spotlight that would just put someone up there for a week or so and drop them back down after. It's just very vague right now to like know where to go as a delegator. Like with the Explorer with something else, I don't know if that's going to really make a difference. I think it would be better to have it in one central location. That's just my opinion.
I've noticed like another protocol, Cardano. What they do is like adapools.org is a third-party website, and they do exactly that. They order things by return on investment, and they got flame emojis and on this pool's on fire, and this one's rocketing to the moon, this one's trending, and you can also like it's it's in your face, right? There's you could submit to get your banner at the top, and that's all really cool, and that probably fills that that requirement for people to just want to see it like in their face. But I also think that probably needs to be separate from the official protocol, because when you go to actually stake your Cardano, it's not in your face. It's very neutral. It's very proper, if you will. So I think Livepeer would benefit from LPT pools, lptnodes.org, and it would just be in your face, trailing 90-day revenue.
It creates the opportunity for something along with what Authority Null was saying, which is actually adding editorial, right? Like you said, oh, there's like a featured node, but like who decides who that is and what we get to say, why they get the spot, right? Like I don't think the official neutral tool should be like making that choice necessarily, but like yeah, lptpools.net can write an article and like feature a different node each day or each week, or let people pay or whatever. They can decide whatever they want to do, but actually give like the color and commentary that would be really helpful, if not necessarily like um, neutral and fair.
No, thanks for that feedback, because I actually don't have any. I don't stake any tokens of any other just any of my any other tokens. So I don't have experience with being on the other side of it. So it's interesting to hear. Thank you. I appreciate the from everyone that gave input on that. Thank you.
Yeah, same with like Polkadot. I'm on that network as well, and if they're they have saturations in their pools, and therefore they're oversaturated. You get skull coming up, being like, you're gonna die if you stake here, right? Like, Livepeer is one of the few protocols where there is no coercion when you hit the protocol explorer, but then that also causes people just to look, Block Daemon has a bunch of I'll just call out Block Daemon here because they never show up, and I don't think I've ever had a conversation with them. But like, I'm pretty sure they're institutional anyway. Like, it just has a bunch of stake, doesn't transcode, right? So like, as a community, if you're a small orchestrator, you should be maybe trying to get attracting stake off of those type of nodes, and trying to direct that stake. I'll finish up there though. But Doug, how much time do you have left? You've been on here for like 40 minutes. I know you were busy.
Yeah, I gotta jump in 5 minutes for 4:15 local for me.
Okay, great. Do you have time to answer one more question? We'll make it quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I do have a question, but I want to open up the floor. Anyone else have their question they're dying to ask? Okay, my last question, I will just finish it off here. You talked about different node softwares. Can you just elaborate on what you mean by that?
Was that when I was referring to saying like everyone's running the same implementation?
Yes.
Yeah, so Livepeer has one client, right? We have the Go Livepeer client. Everyone runs it. It has some configuration options, which are great, but as far as I know, I don't know if anyone has forked it and actually changed the underlying code, right? But so there's this is an open network. Like, anyone can participate as long as they connect to and talk the blockchain protocol. And so what someone could do is they could theoretically, fork the Go Livepeer code base, change the code, build it, and their node would behave differently, right? So that would be one way you could, change your orchestrator node to set specific parameters on ticket prices that were acceptable to you or not acceptable to you, or to change your broadcast node to only work with certain orchestrators or whatnot, right? And I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that a bunch of our node operators might, take that path instead of just waiting for, an official release to incorporate the thing that they're looking for. You can even make a ton of performance improvements and hopefully contribute them back to everyone, but always have the option not to. The kind of second interesting path there is just alternative client implementations, right? Would someone write an additional node that spoke the Livepeer protocol and maybe was implemented in a different language or was specialized for a special use case? As far as I know, no one is actively working on a full implementation. It would be pretty complex as well. I think one of the coolest things coming up there would be the opportunity for the MIS server to actually be its own native Livepeer node instead of needing to speak to another Livepeer node. And it's implemented in a different language. It would probably want to redo some of the implementation and ultimately focus on the broadcaster use case as well, more so than the orchestrator transcoder use case. But it would be cool to have multiple clients in this ecosystem. It creates more resiliency and specialized capabilities, and makes the ecosystem stronger.
Cool. Anyone else have any last comments before Doug signs off? Okay, I would like to thank you, Doug, for joining us in this water cooler chat. We really appreciate you coming and answering some questions, joining the conversation. I know I really enjoyed today's little Q&A, and I'm sure everyone else has. So we will let you go, and thank you so much for joining us.
Sure thing. No, I mean, this is one of the best events in the community. I sometimes I have conflicts, so can't always make it, but I will be back. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, man. Bye.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.
Okay, great. That was great. I'm glad he got to make it. I think I'm gonna kind of do. I don't know. I just want some quick feedback. Last meeting we had Yonda, and this meeting we had Doug. Do people like the Q&A format where I bring in people? Do people find that's a good, like, are people enjoying this?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay. I like, because I was thinking like, I can pretty much, that's what other protocols do. They always usually have a speaker. But I also don't want to put people on the spot of like having to come up with a keynote and all these kind of things. So I just figured to bring them in about halfway through, ask some questions, and they can move on. There's probably a lot of different people I could invite, even people from outside the Livepeer community. For instance, like the NetInt guys that are doing ASIC transcoding chips. Maybe it's worth having them on to talk about their product. Stuff like that. Does that sound interesting to people?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think one thing that might be really helpful is if there was either like 2 days of advance or maybe like a projected schedule. It's like obviously we can come up with lots of great questions, but I think maybe we could pick like one very in-depth question, and then that might be an interesting format. But yeah, Yandin and Doug have been great choices so far, for sure.
Sure, they seemed like a easy fruit to pick because I can just message them and be like, "Hey, I'll hop on for a bit." And like, I didn't message Doug till yesterday, so I didn't even think like my foreplanning on this has been very last minute. But that's also kind of how I roll. So if it works, I would like to keep going with it, and I can maybe plan ahead at least 48 hours or 72 hours. But if this is a good format, then maybe I can actually schedule people in and maybe come up with an actual topic rather than maybe just a Q&A or something like that. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I appreciate all of you being here. Let's continue on with the water cooler chat. This has been great so far. I want to quickly go back to all the topics that we talked about this morning. So let's just jump right into them. Let's talk with some high-level stuff real quick. Authority, you talked about the grant proposal for Titan Node. I know there's a couple people in here that have won the grant, the Titan Node grant, and are up and coming. Authority, just want to ask your question and expand on it a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just curious on the direction you're thinking of taking it.
Great. I'll quickly see if I can wrap this up. I've kind of put it on pause because layer 1 was just not really feasible. But now that layer 2 is starting tomorrow, I'll be kind of digging into it a little bit. Authority, you're actually up, I think up next in the slot. There has been some changes, though. We are going to be setting a maximum staking reward cut that the Orchestrator can take. Prior, in layer 1, we didn't have a limit because if you set it to 100%, you were still not covering reward call. So it was like, it was just a lost cause anyway. But now that reward call is like $2, there's really no, and if it's $2 and you're getting say 5,000 stake, there's really no point for you to be calling reward at like say 100% because you're not actually going to probably attract more stake by doing that. And so likely what you're doing, not specifically to anyone, but likely what the applicant is doing is trying to take money, just take money from an application that they filled in and probably not actually serious about gaining stake. So we, I'm thinking about, what would be an amount of reward cut that would be attractive, but also would cover, some fees. And so I think we're sitting around, like 5%. Like, we want to set the limit to 5%. Authority, so that would imply that you would have to set your reward cuts, your LPT cut, 5% or less. Does that make sense? Do you have any objection against that, or any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I really liked having it at 69, but if I gotta change it to 5, that's fine.
Yeah, and
how did you come up with 5%? Is that would be profitable, I'd imagine, for them?
Well,
at that point,
funny enough, they're still massively profitable.
Yeah, I figured.
I think Varies just put in chat, you need 90 LPT at 100% to call reward profitably.
Okay.
So if you're getting 5,000 stake, like there's just no reason to be above 5%. I was thinking actually less than 4%, because if you put it this way, Varies is one of the sponsors. Varies could stake to himself at 4%. So if because he's generous, he's allowing he's helping other people really activate their nodes. So why would we ask for more of his own cut? If, for instance, so like you, and Doug is another sponsor, and then I'm helping out too, but really, like, it would be more beneficial to have like the person staking is going to be 4%, and then I'm speaking on behalf of Varies right now, by the way, so I don't know what his thoughts are, but I just thought, 50% is just, you're taking money, really, and you're not really attracting new people. Just my thoughts.
Well, oh, go ahead, Barry.
The argument is more like you're trying to grow your node with the startup grant, right? You should receive more work. You hopefully get higher in the leaderboard and attract some stake. Now, if you have a rework cut at, let's say, 20% or even 10%, there are a lot of high-performing small and also bigger orchestrator, for example, like myself, with a lower rework cut. So for a new delegator, it's hard to imagine that he would choose a small, unproven newcomer, like instead of a proven orchestrator with a big stake with a low rework cut. And that is, I mean, unless you have some specific, like, unique feature for your node, for example, like Papa Bear is operating with solar power and something like that, that would attract some delegators specific because of that cause. But from a purely economical standpoint, it's hard to imagine that right now having a higher rework cut than 5% would attract a lot of stake.
So if I could present maybe a counter to that, why not allow something like 10% or 15%? I'm just throwing those out, but have them have their ETH fees at 0, their fee cut at 0. Because the reward income is almost a guaranteed income, right? It helps them grow. But I understand your side of it too, so why would somebody pick something that a node that's doing 10% cut versus 4% cut? But I would think they could grow more if they kept the LPT.
I would not want to set my ETH cut to 0. I'd much rather set the LPT reward to 5.
Because I mean,
and you have to think from the perspective of the delegator, right? So I think the delegator still prefers a low rework cut and doesn't care that much about the fee cut, because there's not a lot of fees that he'll earn anyway. And also for the delegator, the rework cut is a given and is a sure value as long as the orchestrator calls the reward. And from that perspective, even the delegator should focus, at least right now, on the Livepeer token reward.
I mean, the other argument is, it's my startup grant, and what made my node successful in the beginning was I had a 0-0 cut. So the argument could also be, well, if you're going to take the grant, maybe you start at 0-0, just like Titan Node did. So you got to pay reward, you got to pay the fee, but the idea is no one's going to be able to get lower than you because you're 0-0. And then maybe you would actually become successful by getting stake. But then there's another argument that once you lose the grant proposal, then you'll be back down to, because you're going to increase your fees and people are going to be mad. And anyway, there's lots of discussion about this. I won't take it up this whole water cooler because this is something I'm trying to figure out. But I do appreciate all feedback. So maybe
just a real quick, are these rules going to be set per sponsor? Like, can Doug just make his own rules, or is it going to be for the whole grant?
I'll make it across the board because it shouldn't matter who gives you the grant. It should be just a static thing, and then that way more grant sponsors can come in if they feel generous, and everyone plays by the same rules. Like I said, I haven't put much thought into it until now, so because Layer 2 hadn't been live, so.
I can add my 2 cents, or I can talk to you later privately if you want, Titan. Just
go
ask
ahead.
someone who's at the grant. I agree with what you guys are saying, that at least the grant is supposed to be for you to grow your node. So I think that it should be done with the intention to be growing your node and not basically just taking advantage of the money you're getting and keeping a big amount of the rewards that are coming in. Otherwise, first of all, I don't think you're going to get people that are going to want to delegate to you when you're competing with people that have a reward of a few percent. So I think that in the spirit of the grant, it really should be some requirements that are low, that you require a low reward cut. Just my 2 cents as someone who's had it. I feel like it's a privilege to have it, and I think that it shouldn't be abused. I wouldn't like to see it abused, especially if I was the one that was sponsoring it.
Yeah,
So
I really do like that point, because what I would like to do is not have to get sponsors, because a sponsor means that they're sacrificing something to help someone else. If we just require you to set your reward cut to 1%, then we don't need people to sign up to be sponsors. People will just sponsor you anyway that are anonymous, because you're giving them the highest cut out of everybody, and you're being highlighted, right? So it becomes this idea of people can be an anonymous sponsor because they just go, hey, listen, wherever I go with Titan Node Grant, I know I'm getting the best return. And again, so anyway, I'm still thinking about this.
I
And
just want to throw in, that could also be a slippery slope. There's only 100 orchestrators. If people start putting their fee cut or a reward cut that low, other people are going to follow, and before you know it, the whole list is just going to be everybody's at 5%, and nobody can ask for any more.
Yeah, but that's free market dynamics. You can't game that anyway. Like, it's just,
you're free to put it back up after the grant if you think that will work for you.
Right, but if everybody ends up with 5%, nobody's going to go higher than 5 to compete.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's how it works.
That's the world we live in. Yeah.
Well, duly noted, guys. I'll lower my cat. But for the record, back in the day, Vires did tell me, hey, you could set your cut at 100% if you want. And I found that on L2, when LPT was a bit higher, 50% was close to equitable, calling even at about 80 gas. And for that reason, too, I lowered my my fee cut to, I think, one of the lowest on the board at 25, which I plan on keeping there for a while now, so to attract delegators. But I'm open to modifying my current cut as long as I'm on the startup grant. And thank you, Vires.
Yeah, oh yeah, go ahead, Vires. I don't know if you'll say it.
Yeah, this was really about like upcoming grants and not about your grant. So yeah, and I mean, sure, if I calculate correctly, you were barely breaking even at the really high reward cut. So I mean, I would prefer that you would call the reward and I wouldn't get anything and you get something instead of just not calling it and I don't get anything either. So that's why I said that on layer 1.
Yeah, and again, I first of all, I'm the only recipient, but I think much different dynamic on layer 2 than layer 1 as far as what I would consider fair. But again, it's not me giving the grant, so I'll shut up now.
Again, like, you have to realize too that like getting a sponsor for this is like really tough. Like, it's like, it wasn't, not everyone jumped. Like, the 3 sponsors that are there are me, who runs the grant, at Vires, who's very, very generous, and then the founder of Livepeer. So like, it's not like people are jumping at the bit to give people grants, temporary stake. So I
mean, convert it to dollars. It's a lot of money. I mean, you guys are putting up a lot of money to help people out. So I think that
absolutely.
Ideally,
keep it in mind.
Ideally, I don't want to have to accumulate sponsors. I want quote unquote sponsors to just follow the node grant and stake their own tokens. Like, you don't need to have 5,000. The guy who has 50 LPT goes, oh yeah, I'm a sponsor, right? I just follow the Titan node sponsor grant because it's profitable for me. And they become self-sponsors. It doesn't require people to sign up, right? Anyway, that's just some of my thoughts. If we want to continue this conversation, we can continue it in the Livepeer Academy channel. It's probably a good place for it. Or just private message me. But those are my thoughts. Yeah. We'll continue on because we have a lot more interesting topics. Okay, let's jump into it. Let's go to the Redeemer node. We have it came up a few times. Nightwolf. I muted you because you were coming in and out while Doug was talking.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. You talked about your Redeemer node. Jason also had this question about the Redeemer node. Give us your 2 cents on what you've been experiencing and what your question is, and elaborate a little bit.
So I had 5 nodes going. Pretty much 4 of them are on Redeemer node. You can mix and match. You can run some as standalone. You could run some as Redeemer, and it doesn't break either side of it. The ones that were on Redeemer, for example, like I have one that's running at Authority Null's location, and I have a few that are running in some other areas. And the one that's at Authority Null's runs fine. The one that I just started up in Europe, for some reason, I mean, there's really no error messages that come around with it. The only error messages that we're really seeing are just around the RPC nodes for Arbitrum. But it was pretty much at 0 traffic. It would spike up to 1, and then eventually it just kind of went full 0. My test streams for whatever reason, were coming back fine. But I couldn't get any work out of there. I turned off the Redeemer node portion of that, just made it a standalone orchestrator, and I started going back up. I mean, my European streams aren't great, but I was getting up to 5 or so throughout the day, on and off. And it's weird that certain regions are working fine, but others aren't. And the Redeemer node itself is just a virtual VPS that's in California, right? So by far, that is the farthest distance, Europe to California. But I don't know if there's something standing in the way that would be blocking that. So I'm curious as to how you guys are doing it.
Yeah, I'll give you my setup because I've been running it now for two days.
Mhm.
I have one Redeemer node running, so Redeemer only, on a computer that I have. So that's just the Redeemer flag, so no Orchestrator, Transcoder, right?
Mhm.
And then each node, I run Orchestrator and the Redeemer flag. Or not the Redeemer flag, sorry. It just redeems to the Redeemer address. So I'm not running the Redeemer flag on that Orchestrator, right?
No.
Yeah, and then yeah, they've all been working just fine. They went back to the normal streams. Even the one in Singapore would be the farthest away, and it's operating just fine. So I don't know. And you also said normal, but like, what's normal, right? Like, nothing about Livepeer streams is normal. So
I mean, for example, like I was getting like for the EU node, my average streams was like 0.2, right? And once I turned it off, even though it's still not great, I'm at like 1.3. So, and I let it run for about a day. You know, a full cycle of test streams and stuff going to that. There was no issues as far as the load balancing on Route 53. It all stayed the same, but it's like for some reason when I turned that off, everything just started coming back. So I have to try it again, but I don't know why that's happening. It's
I don't know. Anyone else have any experience with Redeemer nodes or questions about Redeemer nodes?
Yeah, I do. And sorry, I'm kind of listening in with half an ear here because I'm working. But did you guys happen to talk about like what happens if there's an issue with an orchestrator communicating with the Redeemer node? Like if it tries to send a ticket for redemption and for some reason that doesn't work, is there a way to determine that easily?
So as far as the way that the Redeemer works, right? Like the way that I set up all mine is that it has a like I'm for testing purposes, just in case something bad were to happen, I put on a unfunded key that I could just, you know, load into MetaMask fund and then pull a ticket if I needed to, if something like that were to ever happen. But as far as like how it's like, if for whatever reason I restart my Redeemer node, it drops all my sessions, right? Like it's if there is no connection to that Redeemer node and it's running that Redeemer flag, or you know I have it connected on the orchestrator coming back to the Redeemer, it will basically then, you know, cut the connection for the streams. Which that's what I was thinking initially was my issue, but then I had other people and other, you know, orchestrators in different regions that were running fine while I was basically getting nothing on the European one. But it runs fine. It does reward calls, but I don't think you're really at risk for losing a ticket or anything.
Like, I don't.
Yeah, I get.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm more thinking like, okay, let's say one of my orchestrators receives a winning ticket. It sends that ticket to the Redeemer node, right? And the Redeemer node actually claims it. So, like, if there's an issue with the communication between my O and sending it to the Redeemer, I'm just wondering, like, could that potentially make it so that I have won a ticket, but I had no way of knowing, and it maybe didn't get redeemed? Or I guess coming back to your point, if there's connection lost with the Redeemer, it seems to actually affect the orchestrator as is. So maybe the fact that I have streams and they're working means that it is communicating effectively with the Redeemer. I don't know.
Yeah, and the way that the Redeemer actually starts up, right? So, for example, the remote orchestrator, when you launch it, because there is no actual like, I have nothing. Like, for example, my key ends in EFF, right? So when I start up my remote orchestrator, it has 0 of those keys that relate to that EFF address on that machine. So when I start it up, it will then say EFF orchestrator EFF is active. So it knows that that is the address that is going to be redeeming things. And yeah, if the connection's not there, it's not going to work. But I would be very surprised if every single like ticket that, because that's the thing is if you don't redeem a ticket on layer one, if I set max gas price and I wasn't redeeming a ticket, it still says, "Hey, you have a ticket. You have a ticket. Your gas price is too high, or your gas price is too low, and it's too expensive right now." So it just sits there for was it 2 rounds, and then it'll expire. So I mean, I don't know, but I would assume it would be about the same. That's what I'm expecting the outcome to be.
So are you seeing that log entry for, hey, ticket was 1, right? Do you see that on the orchestrators logs, or do you see it in the redeemer log, or both?
I can do a grep and see if I can like search for, because like I haven't gotten a winning ticket yet. It's sad, but I do reward calls, right? So I would be
Mhm.
curious to see if I can actually see the reward call transaction going through my orchestrator nodes, like just the notification of it. If that's there, then you could assume that you would also see your winning tickets too, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm I'm almost thinking, because I have my own broadcaster that node that I set up. I'm almost thinking about trying to force a ticket through, just so I can actually see that it works, like on the
Yeah.
mainnet.
That would be a really good test, because that's the thing too, is if you're getting a ton of traffic and you get a winning ticket, you may never see it.
Yep, that's my concern.
Yes, Ftkuhnsman, main chain, first try, do it, love it. I just want to quickly, because this ties into also calling reward, because we're just talking about ticket redemption, calling reward. Chase Media, you just had a question about calling reward that might tie into this a little bit, and I think Papa Bear did too. But Rebecca, do you want to just explain or elaborate what your question was and how that relates and what you're looking to get an answer for?
Oh, hi there. Yes, thank you. It was more if I'm not watching whether the node is called reward on that particular moment, and the and we miss calling it for that day, then I was curious as to kind of, is it timed partway, like halfway through? Sorry, I'm just coming back from something. Yeah, I was just wondering when it was, so that if my node goes down at that very moment, I can easily manually call it, or even be triggered that it wasn't called, rather than miss a call entirely.
Through the CLI, you can do a invoke reward, right? So if you failed to invoke reward, you have the full round to go and do that manually. I believe.
Right, which means that, yeah, I've got to make sure I'm.
When does the reward call happen? Does it happen right at the beginning of the round?
Yeah, about.
Okay, so like if I'm getting notifications from the Vires, from your bot that's saying I haven't called it today, does that mean it may have come through while I was updating to like 529 and I just happened to miss it or something?
Yeah, that means that something is wrong, because it just tries once, reward, and if something is off, for example, like you don't have enough ETH, or the RPC failing, then it will just not try again. And that's one of the reasons why I built a bot, so that people have
Yeah, no,
enough time.
I'm glad I have it running, because I would have had no idea that I didn't call it today. So I'm gonna go and do a manual call after this.
Can you put a link to the instructions for that bot, Varies? Do you have instructions on it?
Yeah,
It's on the forum. Yeah.
Great, because I haven't set that up yet, and I think that would be really helpful. Awesome. Any other questions about reward calling, daily reward calling, or ticket redemption? Great. Yeah, I'm going to be setting up that reward call bot. I think that's really important. Specifically because I know Rebecca and I had a node running, and we just kept running into errors. I think in the newest release they just updated the it won't run into these errors, but the node wouldn't even run for 24 hours before failing, and then it wouldn't call reward, and then you'd forget about it. And also varies if your node is down, does it still remind you that you haven't called, or is that not in there?
Can I
No,
say
it takes
something really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
sure.
Justin, thanks for joining us. Why don't you go ahead and ask
Yes,
your question?
hello. So, okay, my name is Justin, and I'm currently working for on the website for the centralized management of orchestrators and transcoders on the grant. And I just would like to ask if, because I just heard that sometimes it's not calling for the reward, if it's a good idea to implement like a notification on your phone or per email if your reward did not go through, because I planned a feature that you can select a maximum fee or minimum fee when the reward will be called automatically, and if it didn't go through, that you just get a push notification so you can do it manually and look at the prices. If that is a good idea, and if I should put focus on this feature, because it seems pretty important actually.
Yeah, so that's basically what the bot does that I've programmed. It takes the data directly from the blockchain. So it doesn't matter if your node is down or not, it will send you a notification because it basically checks the blockchain for the reward transaction for the orchestrator that you've subscribed to. And if there is nothing, you'll get an alert.
Oh, okay, perfectly. So if I have any question regarding this topic, I can speak to you about that to implement it, maybe.
Sure, if you have any questions, yeah, you can DM me or ask in the Discord.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Justin. I don't think I've seen you. Maybe you've joined us once. I can't remember. But why don't, since you've joined us, why don't you quickly introduce yourself?
Okay. So my name is Justin Brown. I'm from Germany. I'm a programmer. I'm currently in my third year of learning in computer science, and after work, I'm working on the grant program for my proposal, the website plus app to manage all orchestrators and transcoders at the same time. It's basically a web panel you can download or you can host in our cloud, where you can set up your orchestrator or import an orchestrator or transcoder or broadcaster, maybe, I don't know yet. And it's basically for somebody that's new to Livepeer and doesn't know where to start, because I'm pretty tech geeky, and even I had problems setting everything up. So I thought there must be a better way. So I created this proposal, and just would like to all your stuff in this chat. It's my first time in the water cooler chat. It's pretty nice here. I learned a lot. Even though I hadn't much time the last few weeks and months to gather information about the R2 and the new upgrade. I actually didn't know there was an upgrade coming. I don't know nothing. So yeah, it's basically an app or a website that you can clone, or like I said, in the cloud, and you can import, create orchestrator, and it's basically also obviously open source. And I created a plugin system so you can also write plugins. We feature a community store where you can actually download all plugins we feature, or if somebody like to say, hey, we have a new plugin idea, I have this plugin, would you like to feature it on the website? Then we can do that, and it's a nice project.
Very good. Yeah, we're glad to have you. We're really happy to have you join us for the water cooler. We do meet every week, so if you want to continue to join us, yeah, we get really technical, and we really, yeah,
Sure.
you'll be a great contribution and get some good feedback. So thank you so much for joining us. We got about 10 minutes left before we'll wrap this up. I guess yeah. Any other comments on calling reward or ticket redemption?
I was curious in the question you asked, which was if Vires bot works or sends you an alert if your orchestrator is down.
Yes, he answered that because it
did? Oh, sorry.
does. It does work because he said
Missed
it takes data right from the chain. So it doesn't matter if you're running or not. It'll just say, listen, you on chain it hasn't happened, so here's a notification.
Perfect.
And I just want to say firsthand, it saved me from not calling a reward today by me not knowing that I didn't call one. So I just called it, and thank you, Vires.
Yeah, it's an awesome bot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we're definitely gonna use that for ourselves. Great, cool. Yeah, thank you so much, Vires, for building these tools. Makes our. By the way, I think Vires is the reason we have Prometheus and Grafana set up for Livepeer. So, just some really awesome tools that we can use as orchestrators. Okay, let's move on a little bit. I do want to cover one topic that I'm very curious about. Syrinx, you talked about Vault and Console for key management. Just elaborate on that a little bit and on what that is. Oh, wait, I think Syrinx is gone. What a guy. He left me in the dust. That's okay.
He may be trying to reconnect because did he just drop out right as you were talking? That
He said he had to go.
He had to
in
go.
the event chat.
Oh, I missed that. I missed that.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about with Vault. I'm kind of curious. Yeah, really interesting. But we'll get him for next time. Marco, you talked about finding bottlenecks in orchestrators. Did you have any specific questions for orchestrators while we're here when it comes to bottlenecks or any way we can assist you in what you're working on?
Well, so I recently split off my orchestrator and transcoder into a separate VPS for my orchestrator and a separate transcoder at home. But I'm still not getting the performance that I'd like, and I'm like, is it my download speed or is it my transcoding speed of my GPUs? And I'm just curious about how do you all go about finding bottlenecks and getting the most out of your orchestrator?
That's a really good question. The way I do it is I have a public pool, so I have to somehow manage scores from people I don't even know. And so the way I do that is first I have the VPS as close as I can to an orchestrator or a Livepeer ingest node, right? And then from there, from my orchestrator, I calculate the return time of the segment that's being sent to a transcoder. And my minimum to be in my pool is you have to send it back twice as fast as the length of the segment. So if I send you a 2-second segment, I need it back in a second round trip from a transcoder. Anything below that, I just kind of kick you out of the pool. That seems to work quite well. And then I'm usually within 10 to 5 milliseconds from an ingest node. So if I get sent a 2-second segment, I want it back to the broadcaster within, less than a second. Really is ideal. Anything above that, it gets too close. You oftentimes drop a stream. Is from what I've seen. And a lot of this is you can see all your round trip time and some things using the interpreter's what do you call it?
The test stream inspector.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what I do. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
So what are like good transcode times you think for like a 480 720p stream maybe?
So, I mean, based off of transcode, the test scores, which I've been trying to constantly improve this since the beginning. Like I think I started out where my transcode times were like 1 second, and now most of them are down to like 0.13. Honestly, like my issue with my current location is, and the reason I had to go outside of my home is because my upload speed is just a straight band. Like even if I have one upload stream, I only have 35 megabits, and for some reason that is just not enough to push it out fast enough. where it slows it down by almost like, I have the exact same card as Authority. We're like 20 miles away from each other. He's able to transcode in like 0.10 to 0.15, and we have the exact same card, overclock the exact same way. And if I'm doing it in my home with the exact same card, I'm getting like 0.5 to 0.75 for transcode time.
Right.
So upload speed is definitely a factor there. More so than what model graphics card you have too.
But are
So,
you guys both running split or OTs? Or, and you're talking about your
yes.
score on the interpreter dash or whatever we want to call that.
Yeah.
On the test streams.
He did have he used to have like a lower transcode time when he was running a combo, like where it was on the same process. His transcode times did drop by like it went from like 0.10, 0.11 to like 0.12 to 15 by going on a split, even when transcoding through localhost. So there's a
on the same
slight
machine, even
on the same
machine.
machine. Me, I'm uploading to a server, and then I'm using that as my orchestrator for
Right,
newer.
because and you do know that the when you're split physically, the score you're getting is including the up or the let's see the
yeah.
download
So
or upload time, right?
initially, before I got Redeemer going, Authority was just we were using one of his cards, and it was just transcoding to my VPS server. So he was doing the exact same kind of outbound to my VPS as I was, and his scores were coming in like basically exactly the same, like as if he's on like doing it from his house. So his were coming in at like 0.15 for transcode time to my VPS server, as mine was coming in at like 0.75 on mine. And I guess it's just not enough pipe to push through those short transcode segments, almost instantly. Whereas if he has a gig, he's able to just kick it out instantly. So that's like my biggest thing and that's why I like VPS servers, dedicated GPU VPS servers in ingest node cities are a huge deal. You'll get like insane round trip times by just putting them in the ingest nodes cities.
Yeah, I posted my my minimum metrics for Titan Node in the event chat. So yeah, you need greater than 100 megabits per second upload, which assumes you're on fiber. You need less than 0.2 real-time ratio on the local card, and you have to be less than 50 milliseconds from an ingest node. That is what's required for Titan Node pool right now, and I'm sitting around number 1 or 2 on the global performance board. And I don't drop streams because of performance because of that. So that's been good for me. Marco, does that make sense? Do you have any other questions on performance?
No, that makes total sense. And I'm thinking that my internet is going to be the biggest problem then. But luckily I'm moving out in a couple of months. So hopefully I can get gigabit fiber then.
I mean, if you're getting 35 megabits up, you'll still win tickets. You'll still get work. Like I was able to get 5 tickets without actually reaching, branching out and using external resources. So it's still possible. It's just like I think pre migration, I was like down to like the 40th spot as far as performance, and now that I'm branched out to like three different locations, I'm globally number 5. So like it's definitely an improvement to have bandwidth more than anything. I think because like you want to get that millisecond response as low as possible.
All right. Thanks for the answers.
I want to know how Solar Farm got to such a good Singapore score. What's he doing?
Yeah, actually,
stuck a VPS in Singapore.
What a GPU VPS?
No, it shoots back to my to the closest what I have in Europe.
Really?
But
what?
I think honestly, once they fix the test problems, I don't know that it'll be necessary. But I just talking to enough people, I got the feeling that anything that over 100 milliseconds was just failing. So I thought putting an
Wouldn't that
intermediary there. Sorry.
How is it possible
wouldn't
that
that
you
like
can be getting
make
such high or low latency when your actual T is sitting in Europe?
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
yeah, wouldn't that make it like more latency
Well, because it's not
when you
right now,
add
the way the tests are
like
working, they're not showing the upload time. So I'm not sure how that's going to work once it's all once they fix the test. The other odd thing is in LA, and I figured this out by being in Titan's pool, I get a faster round trip time going through a VPS than directly from my house going to the Livepeer ingest server. I mean, it makes no sense to me.
is the VPS an VPN or an
No, it's just
orchestrator?
it's just a VPS that's located near the ingest server in LA. And if
Yeah, but like
I'm again, coming from the same exact computer in my house, it's faster for me to go through another server than it is for me to go directly to Livepeer.
Papa, have you ever done
so
like
you're
a
running an
have you checked your like how many hops that like maybe you're coming up shorter on hops by
Well, it's one less hop to get to, or sorry, it's one less hop to get to Titan, and then that
Mhm.
last hop for Titan seems to be is like a millisecond or less.
Titan somehow is inside the data centers with them.
Yeah, I found their data center, and I'd somehow I did
Well,
that with
I actually
Singapore.
that's what I actually ended up doing that for myself. I got a small little server in the same place, and my speeds improved, which is just to me still bizarre because again it's coming from the same machine in LA, which is relatively close to where the again it's going to the same place. I mean I think they might be in the same building. I mean it's less than a millisecond from that VPS to it's taking the same path. Like when I check the path, I mean, it's the same path up until like that last hop. So it's I don't know what kind of weird routing is going on once it gets inside the building there that it takes longer to get to Livepeer, but it takes the exact same path to up until that last hop, which is again in this. I'm pretty sure it's in the same facility. If not, it's a millisecond away. So or less than a millisecond away.
the VPS is running an orchestrator, right?
The VPS is running an orchestrator, and I run the transcoder from my house now. It used to be combined in my house to the same, going to the same data center.
Well, that's confusing.
That's weird.
I would have never, ever in a million years ever thought that. But then I was like, wait, how am I getting faster times through Titan's pool than I am direct myself when everything's happening on one machine?
Curious,
But
were you running a separate process for Orchestrator and Transcoder?
no, I was running it. No, combined.
Okay.
Yes.
Just I noticed there is a little difference there. A little bit of overhead. Surprisingly, there is a little overhead.
Running together
on the same
or
machine. Yeah, having Orchestrator and Transcoder run as separate processes on the same machine is a
right now. So, but this was
bit of
the
an
same
overhead.
process though. Yeah, same process though. Like yeah, that's why I was like, it made no sense to me at all. But for $5 or whatever it is, $6 to get this better score, it's worth it just to run it separate and have the VPS over there.
Yeah, I found that VPS by fluke. Just insane. It's in the same same with Singapore. I also am less than 1 millisecond away. So I think Singapore and LA, I'm in the exact same data center. I'm still trying to find the other ones, but yeah. Anyway, cool.
I've got the list, and they're all mapped out. If you go to my of where where all the ingest servers are, I mean, I can post it if you want.
I know where they are. I just got to figure out how to rent something in there for really cheap.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Cool. Okay, it has been 2 hours we've been on this water cooler. We've gone through a slew of topics. We have had a session with is he a founder or a co-founder? I think he's a co-founder. Anyway, I don't know if there's even a difference. Founder of Livepeer, Doug. was great to have him on, and we've talked about any topics. Did we have any last comments before we close out?
I have one, and it's directed towards Vires because I think he would be the one that would know. Do you know, is there a way to check to see now that we've moved over to layer 2, how many delegators you have? Because before I would use Hubble, but that doesn't work anymore. And I remember the other day you made a comment about how many delegators you had, and I was just wondering how you figure that out now.
I mean, that was still on L1. So right now, I think there are only 2 options. One was already mentioned. It's the graph. I'm not entirely sure if it works with Arbitrum yet. And the other option would be to query basically the blockchain. So you would have to look for all the bonding events towards your node, which is quite a pain.
I tried to like manually go through a bunch of that yesterday. It took me a couple hours. I didn't figure anything out. So okay, so you don't have a way to do it easily now, currently.
No, not really.
Okay. If you can't figure it out, then I'm sure I can't either. All right.
I mean, I could set up a script maybe, but still you would have to basically scan the whole block history, and for that it's probably good to have like an archive node. So yeah, it's a bit expensive to do that.
Yeah, no, it sounds a lot more complex than I was hoping. All right, then hopefully someone will figure out or there will be a new tool or something that comes along. But in the meantime, I'll just have to keep an eye, because I had no idea that someone delegated towards me the other day until someone pointed it out to me. So yeah, I guess that still wouldn't have told me that someone delegated towards me. But,
how did they they can delegate you without yeah, because the redeeming of the stake is for people who already delegated.
Yeah, I was just trying to be nosy and try and track down and figure out who it was. But,
great.
Not important.
One last comment. Justin, Gaming Club Germany, had mentioned he doesn't know if it's been talked about yet, but the 100 orchestrators is constantly is getting harder and harder to get in. Will the floor eventually, change? Oh, yeah, we actually, Doug talked about this in depth about an hour into this conversation. So I will just direct you, when I upload this to YouTube, I'd recommend you go back about halfway through this video. You'll find the answer, because it's gets talked about quite in depth. So I'd recommend checking that out when it comes out. Okay, we will call it there. It's been 2 hours and 5 minutes. I appreciate you all coming to this week's water cooler chat. It's been great to see the community continue to improve, evolve, grow, and grow together. And I appreciate you all being here. We do this every week, so come join us and hop into the conversation. I will end it there. So thank you so much for coming, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Titan. Always appreciate it.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, all.
Goodbye, everyone.